So thank you so much for joining us today, Marc. To get started, may you please introduce yourself, your title, who you are?
I'm Marc Zazeela from APC Postal Logistics. And I'm not sure if I have a title per se, but my role in the company is business development and helping our customers grow their international footprints.
Can you give us a bit of history or background on APC Postal Logistics?
Sure. The company was founded in 2001. We started in international. It was always in international. Started sending mail all over the world. And back then it was magazines and catalogs and direct mail and things like that. Things that were very common back then are probably a little less common now. So we took a lot of the ideas and technology and transportation lanes that we had used for mail, and we said, well, hey, all of this will work for small packages and e-commerce type business as well. We can use the same carriers. We can use a lot of the same methodology. We've been tracking to about 185 countries or so. There were just over 200 in the world, and we track to about 185 now. We've built that out over the years by creating APIs, tracking APIs with different partner carriers and different local couriers and different local posts. And it's been quite an evolution.
And we'll definitely touch on those points too. You've mentioned a couple acronyms here, which we will dive deeper into to clarify, such as DDP, DDU, API. Just to wrap up your point there, I think given the nature of the e-commerce industry, especially with international mail, tracking is extremely important and vital since it goes from multiple carriers, facilities, and hands. So, from Canada, which is where we are, all the way to, say, Australia, our recipient in Australia is, anxiously waiting for their package, and they want to be able to follow as many tracking events as possible.
The first thing that people ask for once they place an order, where's my tracking number? So 10 years ago, they may not have. Now it's become ubiquitous, and that's what everybody wants. So if you're not able to give them tracking, that could be a problem.
Exactly. The transparency is really important for the tracking events, right? So let's tackle some of these terms that you mentioned, DDP and DDU. What does this mean for your e-commerce seller?
It's important to both the seller and the consumer. Both relate to the import fees or duties and taxes that everyone is subject to. Almost all countries have fees that they charge for people importing products into their countries. So DDU stands for delivered duty unpaid. And what that means, and that's the old school way of shipping, the way that people have done it for years, is you're going to ship a product like you're suggesting from Canada to Australia. Well, Australia may have some customs fees due depending on what the product is. What happens then, since it's shipped delivered duty unpaid, the local agent is going to collect from the customer at the point of delivery. So hypothetically, a postal worker could show up at your house and say, Diana, I've got your package. You owe $10 in taxes because that's what needs to be paid. That's what customs says. And they won't leave the package with you until the fee's been paid. Well, if you think about the logistics of that, it can cause two problems. The first one is that the postal worker is going to show up during normal business hours. A lot of people aren't home then because they're working as well. So when that happens, they'll leave a note at the door and they'll say, I was here, I have your package, but I couldn't leave it. Now we'll bring it back to the post office. Please come to the post office and pick it up and bring money with you. So it creates a bit of friction at the very end of the process. The customers had a great buying experience and the website was great. The products are fabulous and the prices gave them a great value. And now the very last link in the chain is a little bit uncomfortable. So that's the DDU or delivered duty unpaid option. The DDP service stands for delivered duty paid, is one that we recommend very strongly. Delivered duty paid makes it a far better experience for both the merchant and the customer, because the merchant calculates the cost of the duties and taxes at the point of sale. They understand what that is, and they collect that from the customer up front. So now if we're taking the package across a border, we'll pay the customs fees at clearance and then hand off to the local agent in that country who can now deliver to the customer without anything being due. So the benefits are that the customer doesn't have to be home, first of all, and they know exactly what they're going to pay without any surprise at the door.
Yeah.
And we've seen it countless times. The delivery agent shows up and says, okay, it's a DDU shipment. I need to collect some additional fees from you. And the customer says, oh, I wasn't expecting that. I don't want to pay. So they refuse the shipment. So now the customer's not happy because they didn't get their order. And the merchant paid to ship it there. And now the customer's not going to accept the order.
Yeah.
And it's going to get shipped back. And it may not get shipped back. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There's no guarantee on the return of undelivered items. So it's a total loss for the merchant, both in dollars and cents or whatever the currency is, and also in goodwill. They've created a bit of animosity with that customer who may or may not buy from them again because they didn't give them the best possible buying experience.
I think it's that transparency of being upfront as a company, as a online storefront, and saying, for international orders, there is a more premium option, if you will, for shipping, so that it'll cover all customs duties and taxes, no surprises at your doorfront. So what you pay is exactly what you're paying, end of story, full stop.
Well, and what's interesting, Diana, in that in a lot of cases, the ultimate cost of acquisition of the product actually becomes less. In many cases, the DDP shipping cost is lower than the DDU cost because it's a different carrier. And then a lot of countries, particularly European countries now, and I know Canada Post does this too, they charge a fee to make the collection transaction. So if you ship to Germany, for example, and you ship it DDU, the German postal worker will show up at the door, and they'll want to collect the duty and tax, which is due, and that number is going to be the same no matter how you ship it. But they're also going to want a fee for the German post office to make the transaction. So on top of the duty and tax that you're paying, which you're going to pay no matter what,
of course,
now you've got an additional collection fee, and it's anywhere from $10 to about $25, depending on where you're shipping. So it really changes the total cost of acquisition quite a bit. When you ship DDP, since there is no collection at the door, that fee goes away completely.
Wow. So there's a lot of incentive then to do the DDP option. In addition to having no surprises, being transparent with your customer, you're also looking at slightly lower costs upfront for that service.
The other benefit, Diane, is that when you ship DDU, in most cases, the final mile carrier is the local postal system. And I think that the pandemic has pointed out how some of them are really strong. When you ship DDP through us, we choose the local carrier. We pick who we want to provide the final mile. And we can make selections based on what we feel is the best option in that country. So when DDU, you're pretty much relegated to a local post office. That's almost probably 90% of the time. DDP, there are far more options, and we can take steps to mitigate some of the local delivery issues that may happen when you ship DDU. So not only is it less expensive and more comfortable for the consumer, in many cases, or I'd say in most cases, the delivery time is actually shorter.
The pro and the con is that when they go onto Stallion and they create an international shipment, they get many different options, especially with APC, whether it's untracked, tracked, and then DDP versus DDU. So it's really important for our users to now see through this conversation the real benefits of choosing DDP. To wrap this topic up, let's talk a bit more about our partnership and how Stallion works with APC to provide this excellent service for our online sellers. So we partnered a couple of years ago, and we were one of the first companies in the industry to choose a partner like APC, which had these multiple different international shipping options, in particular DDP. It becomes more and more difficult to rely on just the local carrier, which you mentioned. And now with APC, you have the power to choose and help mitigate some of the delivery, troubles in these countries as they evolve as well. With our locations now covering the East Coast and the West Coast in Canada, we've brought the APC service to all of our regions because we recognize how powerful it is to have these international shipping options. And as e-commerce grows as well, rather than just looking at the US, which is still, a big audience for consumers, we're also looking internationally so that you can really help these Canadian online brands grow a global recognition. Do you have any final thoughts in terms of any tips or tricks for these Canadian online sellers, other things to consider when they're trying to, market or sum up their international shipping option for their consumer?
I think just in general, what I've seen is that it's sort of like what you're suggesting about, the Canadian market's pretty mature, so is the US market. It's pretty easy to see what the potential is there. What we notice is that there are so many emerging markets around the world with incredible potential. Something that a lot of us take for granted, I think, is that a lot of people in these places don't have access to the same products and services that we take for granted every day. They can't go to retail. There's no, there are people that don't live within 50 miles of a store that they could buy something even if it was in the store. So they have to rely on buying things online more and more. And so I think that from a merchant's point of view, a seller's point of view, I would really focus more of my marketing attention internationally because there's less competition, there's more demand, and now with the partnership that we have between us and Stallion, it makes reaching those places really easy.
So I've taken away a lot, so I can only imagine our Stallion users and potential users have learned a lot as well, especially when it comes to international shipping, what DDP is, what DDU is, and how these services benefit your business in different ways. We will definitely connect soon again. International shipping has, grown more and more popular and becomes a complicated thing to the average online seller who's just getting started, and even to the mature seller who might be, still unsure of how to make their business operations more efficient. So thank you so much again for your time, Marc. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate it. And I know our users will be appreciating this as well.
My pleasure, Diana. Thank you for having me.